I'm a person, and my name is Anakin.
Happy May the 4th, everyone. We are the Cinema Squad. I'm Austin.
I'm Ty.
I'm Roman.
And Roman looks like Jar Binks.
Misa back.
Ba-dum.
Welcome back to the channel. We are really excited because it's Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you, right? In honor of Star Wars Day, we are going to be talking about the 25th anniversary of Phantom Menace. It's back in cinemas this weekend. I know I'm going to go be seeing it. I don't know about you guys, but really excited. So today we're going to talk about the legacy of the movie, our favorite parts about it, how it's held up over the years. 25 years is a long time. I feel kind of old, you know?
Yeah.
I remember seeing this movie in second grade. It's a great movie. As a kid who grew up in the 90s, you know, the prequels were a good time. Let's talk about what is your favorite part of the movie. So Ty, I'll start with you.
Fun fact, I was in a movie theater when I saw my first any kind of advertisement of Phantom Menace. I had only watched the original trilogy, and so I was like, what in the world is this? Are they remaking Star Wars? I didn't fully comprehend because I was only 7 years old, like what was about to happen. One of the first intros to it was the pod racing. Was like part of what I got to see for these prequel films that I was going to come to love. I guess I want to talk about the pod racing. That was cool to see young Anakin demonstrate his high capabilities with the Force of being able to pilot something that most humans can't pilot. So to see this young kid that's like literally our age when we're watching this at the time, be able to race against Sebulba and all these professional pod racers, and to see how Qui-Gon had so much faith in him and faith in the Force that he would wager their entire ship, and then also wagering for Anakin's life. This race was more than just a race. This changed the course of Star Wars history.
I mean, it's such an iconic scene. I mean, even if people don't like Phantom Menace, but who doesn't love really? I mean, they're basically fast like sports cars, right? They're going through these death-defying stunts, and everybody blows up, and Anakin's the one that survived. It's like, as a kid, you're just like, I can do that too.
They made a Star Wars pod racing video game, and they used like the sound effects for like Formula One for that scene.
I literally have it on N64 still.
I don't know if you went to Dave and Buster's back in the day, but they had the
thing where you hold on to,
where you like
and you can
sit
actually
in
like,
it,
move
you
it.
Actually move it. Yeah. And every time that I get on a zero-turn lawnmower now, I'm like, I'm in a pod racer.
Just punch it as fast as you can.
That's right.
What about you?
I do love the pod racing scene, and one quick note about that. We made the joke at the beginning that I look like Jar Binks. I do not. But growing up, everybody thought that I looked like Jake Lloyd, the young Anakin, and I kind of did. I had the same kind of hairstyle, same kind of haircut, blonde hair at the time. And I love that scene, and one note about that scene is that I realized much later, I'm a big fan of the improv comedy show, Whose Line Is It Anyway? Mm-hmm. And one of the contributors on that show is Greg Proops. And I realized later that he's the voice of one of the announcers of the pod race. And I was like, no way, that's Greg
awesome.
Proops.
Not to be confused with Greg Poops.
Exactly.
Okay. But my favorite scene, and we're off the rails. My favorite scene in that movie is the only scene that can top the pod racing scene. And it is the duel between Darth Maul, Qui-Gon, and Obi-Wan.
Duel of the Fates?
At that point, we'd only seen one-on-one lightsaber battles in the original trilogy. This is the first time that we saw 2-on-1. It was the first time that we saw a lightsaber be anything more than just a regular stick. And the doors open and Darth Maul is there. Well,
the closest thing you got to a fast-paced lightsaber fight in the originals is Luke versus Vader in Return of the Jedi. I mean, don't get me wrong, those fights are great. But that was like you said, that was the first time you really got something that was more like...
The choreography is just not
the choreography was more upbeat. They knew what they were doing. George went for something even grander, and you have two guys flipping over each other and doing all that stuff. Like, it's iconic.
And then you have all that those acrobatics that you didn't necessarily see.
Yeah.
In the original, you also had the element of they were doing it in the hallway, so you had the force fields come down.
There's a lot of suspense added to it.
And then Darth Maul had to fight them both off, and obviously the tragic scene that stuck with so many of us as kids when Qui-Gon gets killed and then Obi-Wan kicks it into another gear. As a side note, Darth Maul was what I thought the devil looked like for many years of my life.
Sorry, Ray.
I loved the character, and I wish we'd gotten more of the character in live action. I know he came back in some of the animated stuff.
Yeah, which was great.
I love the character, and there's a great YouTube short, a fan-made short, called like Darth Maul's Apprentice or something.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it, go to YouTube. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And that was a great intro to him when he's on the speeder in the desert and he jumps off.
Yeah.
That's cool too. But my favorite scene is the duel because it's just so good and so tragic and so well done.
Obviously, those are the two what everybody picks, but you know, when I think of Phantom Menace, like obviously all that stuff's really good, but I kind of go from it. My favorite parts about the movie are a little more abstract, specifically like when Qui-Gon, they get Anakin, they go to Coruscant. Anakin's thrown into this whole world he's never known because he's always been on Tatooine. He's really scared and he's kind of asking all these questions. And Qui-Gon leans down to him and he says, "Remember, Anakin, your focus determines your reality." And when you tell a little boy that who does nothing else other than like slavery and all that stuff, and he tells him your focus determines your reality, he's like warning him like, be mindful of what you're thinking. Be mindful of all these fears and things, because if you don't, it can go the wrong way. Obviously, we all know what happened with Anakin. But what's so powerful about that is the relationship that Qui-Gon had with Anakin in that short time in that movie. We see what would have happened if Qui-Gon wouldn't have died. If he would have survived, Anakin probably would have went down a totally different path. And so that's my favorite part of the movie, because Qui-Gon is just that father figure that Anakin's never had.
I'm a huge fan of What If.
Yeah, What If's great.
And I think a big one that I would love to see actually played out is if Qui-Gon survived.
Yeah.
You know, because he was the father figure that Anakin needed.
So, I mean, this movie obviously has so many iconic things, and it's so many characters that we were introduced to in 1999, apart from the Luke, Han, Leia, trio. So, what's y'all's favorite character out of the movie?
It's hard not to love Obi-Wan. I think that's the low-hanging fruit for me. I loved seeing young Anakin, but seeing a young Obi-Wan who's like agile, and the way that he fought Maul, especially after he saw Qui-Gon go down. We've never seen Obi-Wan like that.
Yeah.
Because all we've known up to this point is
old
Ben.
Obi-Wan.
This was a whole new perspective on Obi-Wan. You're like, holy cow, like Obi-Wan's kind of bad to the bone.
And it brought us the wonderful Ewan McGregor.
Yeah.
Who just killed.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
for
Ewan,
years.
this is the reason the prequels are so good. What about you, Ron?
So many great characters to pick from. Obviously, I think the low-hanging fruit for me would be Liam Neeson. But, because I wish we'd gotten more of him, I gotta say Darth Maul. Disney for a while had that build your custom lightsaber, and for me, it was always the double-sided was the coolest thing ever.
Oh, I had a Darth Maul lightsaber.
Yeah.
And I was like, if I could customize it, it would be double-sided like Darth Maul, but it would be purple like Mace Windu.
Every kid wanted the double-bladed lightsaber.
Yeah.
Nobody cared that it was a bad guy. I think Darth Maul's everyone's. I mean, like Darth Vader's so iconic, but I think a lot of people pick Darth Maul as their favorite Sith.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny for me. I mean, it's Qui-Gon. Liam Neeson's such a great actor. Would love for him to have more of a part in Star Wars. He has been part of the animated a little bit, and he showed up in Obi-Wan at the end. But I think that's like the thing that we've missed the most, is just having Qui-Gon more present. My favorite part of the movie, just like short period of time we had him, Qui-Gon as a Jedi, like his wisdom. He went against the Jedi Order. He didn't want to follow their politics, any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And I think if Qui-Gon would have stayed around, things could have happened differently.
It's not talked about, but it's clear that an underscoring part that doesn't really get touched on is like the loss of Qui-Gon to the Jedi Order as a whole.
I think the Jedi kind of lost their way a little bit.
No, they did.
I think
and like
that was the start.
He was kind of the one that saw the Jedi for what they needed to be. And you talk about balance. The Jedi thought that balance was like thousands of Jedi and 2 Sith. They had a jaded perspective, and they had gotten into the politics, and they had kind of lost their way. And I feel like Qui-Gon was like the last of a dying breed of
Jedi.
Of like truly good.
Obi-Wan never, I don't think, met that same potential, but I think, Obi-Wan's one of the greatest Jedi as well, and I think the reason he was is because of Qui-Gon.
Yeah.
I think it's the only reason Obi-Wan was able to take care of Anakin the way he did, even though obviously Anakin obviously went a different way. Qui-Gon was never a master it was never part of the council because of his obstinance against their politics. I think the thing is Qui-Gon, he cared about the people more than he cared about what the Jedi were trying to do as a whole.
Yeah.
And that's why he took Anakin.
He had a sense of morality.
A lot of Jedi, even Obi-Wan was like, do we really need to take this kid off of this planet? Like, what's the point of this? And Qui-Gon's just like, there's potential in this kid.
He was definitely against it.
Well, one of the characters we didn't mention, and I don't think most people would mention him, is Jar Jar Binks. I kind of want to talk about just like unpopular opinions. And like, obviously a lot of people, when they think of Phantom Menace, they hate on this movie because they're just like, well, Jar Jar Binks was terrible. He was silly. Some people make fun of young Anakin. In my opinion, Jar Jar Binks isn't that bad of a character.
No.
George made Star Wars for kids. Yeah, he was more silly than like stuff you got in the original trilogy. But honestly, he was kind of that comic relief that was just fun to have as a kid.
I think Jar Jar was the answer, because the original tone of Star Wars, in the first one especially, it was a little cheesier. It was a little bit lighter as far as like the dialogue, and you could tell it was made for kids. But then stuff started to get more serious and more political in the prequels, because that's how you get to war. I think Jar Jar was there as that, remember, this was made for kids.
One thing that did get me a little bit, that I was like, okay, was when Jar Jar's like fumbling around in the war scene and then is like taking out these droids. But in a way, like, it's also, that's the point, right? He's this goofy character that's like stumbling and fumbling his way, but somehow, some way is like actually helping out.
Yeah.
And actually provides value. He does prove his worth.
I mean, he became a senator, so...
Yeah, and he did also lead to, helping Palpatine get to where he got, because he had to, fill in for Padme, but...
Yeah, for sure.
That's a whole nother story.
That's a story for another time.
Yeah. I think it's important to talk about legacy here. How do you think this movie has stood the test of time? Like, we look back 25 years. What's your thoughts?
Honestly, like it still holds up, in my opinion. I mean, like I said, I was second grade when the movie came out. I remember it fondly. I remember all the toys. I remember all the memories about it. The older that I've gotten, the more that I've come to know some of those deeper meanings, like I was talking about, specifically with Qui-Gon and the father figure and Anakin and that kind of thing. So I think the movie's great. Is it my favorite out of the prequels? No. But I do gravitate towards it because there's some iconic things in there with Darth Maul. Pod racing. I mean, that's why I'm so excited about seeing the movie again, this weekend with the 25th anniversary. I would give it a solid 8.5 out of 10.
The original trilogy was like our parents. This was us. And not to get into the Disney of it all, because that's another podcast, but I think one thing that Disney did for Star Wars positively was allowing the prequels to age well. This
was the first ever Star Wars I got to see in an actual movie theater, so to me that will always have a special place in my heart. I loved it. To this day, it's probably top 4 Star Wars movie for me. I had the attachment that went over your ear so you could have the long
I had a Halloween costume that was like
dude,
it.
So I loved it.
So you heard it here first. The real villain of Phantom Menace is Obi-Wan's haircut.
Well, we would love to hear what you guys think about this movie. I know a lot of you are going to be watching it this weekend. Star Wars fans all over the place, celebrate Star Wars Day, May the 4th. So we're glad you guys joined us today. So definitely comment. Let us know what your favorite things about the movie are, or even the things that you hate. And so with that, May the 4th be with you.